So welcome to all our brothers and sisters. I am very happy once again to be with you this evening. So as decided by our brotherhood, we are going to have a study of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which is a very wide subject and which was very much explained by our master E.K. in India as well as in all our Western groups in Western countries. And also during my visit to our centers in Geneva and in Switzerland and other countries, and also in Russia and Ukraine, we have touched this subject from time to time. And now we will make a start of this subject, and every week we will make the study of this subject as a continuation so that we can go deeper into the study of this subject. So, when we speak of the evolution of the beings, so in the four kingdoms, everything is quite natural, because in the creation, everything is quite natural, because everything is according to the divine plan. And according to that, we have the four kingdoms: the mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom, animal kingdom, and the human kingdom. So it goes according to the divine plan, and because everything is governed by the laws of nature, and everything is in all these kingdoms, except of course the human kingdom. In this evolution process, when we come to the human evolution, then there is some deviation, in the sense that more independence is given to the human kingdom than the other three lower kingdoms. So then what happens is, even though everything is quite natural, but in the human evolution, there is always a crisis we experience around us and within us. Where is the origin of this crisis, or rather what is the cause of this crisis? That is a dark crisis, so to say. It is in the form of our behavior. That is the crisis. Origin of crisis is in the behavior. So, in the present time also, we have the behavior problem, because we have now at the present, and now the whole human race is in a crisis. You know very strange thing is, or interesting thing is, since times immemorial, since many centuries or since even before, always for the human mind, they always think of or speak of a crisis ahead. For the other kingdoms, there is no such expectation of any crisis, because they follow the natural course. But the human beings always think of a crisis ahead every time. And why? Why there should be a crisis? What is the reason? That is in the human behavior, in the form of the human behavior. So the crisis is, we think always it is ahead, we are ahead of, crisis is ahead to us, but always the crisis is from our behavior. Even the present crisis which humanity is facing now, that is also because of that. Because the human intelligence, the behavior of the human mind is in such a manner that there is a sort of misuse of the independence given to the human kingdom. And this misuse, this tendency to misbehave or misuse, where is the origin of this and how can we get out of this? Because now you see, for example, we have now the very terrifying disease, corona, COVID-19. So, when you consider the virus of this corona, how tiny it is when compared to the human structure, the human being. This was the result of the so-called scientific research in which there is an effort to manipulate in that very minute level with the genetic structures. So, with the human intelligence, we made manipulations of the genetic structures, and in this work, one such manipulation was done with certain virus, and this has led to the outcome of the present most treacherous virus, which became really a dread to the human race. The whole human race is fighting a war much more dangerous than the past wars, without any weapon. This war is going on. When you consider the mass of this tiny virus, corona, if the whole mass of this corona put together, because now about 5 million people in the world are affected. More than 5 million are affected. And when you take up all the mass of this virus from all the 5 million people, if you put together, it comes to a maximum of 2 grams, not even 2 grams. You see, so this virus, which is maximum of 2 grams of mass, is causing so much of damage to more than 500,000 of human beings. And the human beings now are helpless now. It is proved that they are helpless. They are very much afraid. They don't find any real solution, how to stop it or how to get over it, all these things. Why all this? So this is itself is a crisis. So where is the origin of this crisis? The origin is definitely from the behavior of the human mind. We have to accept this. When you trace this back, definitely the origin is the human mind, how the human mind behaves. So how is the process of this crisis in the human mind? When there is the origin of individual mind, it inaugurates individual activity. Because there is universal mind which governs all the laws. And when all the kingdoms are subdued to the universal mind and universal laws, then there is no need of any crisis, because everything goes on naturally, according to that. But when there is an origin of individual mind from the universal mind, this individual mind inaugurates individual activity. And when there is individual activity, it is bound to be different from the activity of nature, definitely. The individual activity of the human mind is bound to be different from the activity of nature. So what is the result is that the human beings react to nature, to the lower planes of consciousness, on the lower planes of consciousness. We have our lower planes and higher planes of our consciousness. So on the lower planes of consciousness, we react to nature. Then what happens is, it becomes very inevitable duty for us, for the human beings, once again to neutralize this react to nature. Otherwise, we make our existence itself impossible. Because when the react to nature continues and increases, then it proves that our existence on the planet itself makes impossible, is made impossible. So, what we have to do is, invariably, we have to neutralize this react to nature. And then we have to sublimate it into the active nature of human existence. So whenever it is necessary, then definitely everyone makes an attempt for that. It is necessitated for everyone. When there is too much of reactive nature on the individual level, then the time comes when he is necessitated to sublimate this into the active nature. So the time comes for everyone for his own necessity. That is what we find always. So until the attempt is made, the human being lives on the individual plane. And as long as he lives on the individual plane, he tries to find out how he is different from others. How he is different from others. So that creates a differentiation and that creates a type of attitude which is against the group activity or group living. So, as long as we feel how we are different from others, then we cannot find real solution for the crisis. So therefore, when once the attempt is made to overcome this, then we feel the necessity of the practice of yoga. We have to practice yoga. So, it is to be made until we get the right path. And there is only one path for everyone. Because since the truth is only one, there cannot be two truths. In the same manner, the right path is always only one. Just like how a circle cannot have two centers. In the same manner, the path is always one path for everybody. And this path is known by different names, by people living in different places. So, by whatever name it is called, but it is the real path. That is the path of yoga. So, how to understand, how to realize, and how to follow this path? Where is the guidance for this? Where is the proper guidance for this? When we have a search for this guidance, for the practice of yoga in the right path, we have two books in that direction, and one is the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali and other is Bhagavad Gita. These books they are not at all, they have nothing to do with any sect or cult or any religion or anything. They are universal. They give us the universal truth and universal procedure, mostly. What to follow, how to follow, what is to be followed, that is a universal procedure. So, Yoga, when we speak of the subject of yoga, so this yoga consists of three different aspects. One is the yoga literature, that is one aspect. Other is yoga practice, and another aspect is yogic living. So all these three put together come under the subject yoga. So yogic literature, we have so much of literature on yoga. That gives us so much of information. But yoga of Patanjali and Bhagavad Gita, they do not go on pouring out the information. They give only direct, simple and practical instructions for us to practice in our daily life. That is what you find in these books. So the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali is in the form of aphorisms. It is called sutras in Sanskrit. Sutra means in Sanskrit a thread. You know the thread. Sutra means the thread. So, the subject of yoga or the instructions of yoga are given in the form of sutras or aphorisms. The sutra has a giving in the form of sutra. There is certain specific procedure. A sutra has some certain qualities. So there are many types of sutras, Yoga Sutras, Brahma Sutras, so like that, Dharma Sutras, Bhakti Sutras, like that. So in the sutra you find it precise, precision. A sutra is not very extensive, but it is precise. But at the same time, crystal clear. And it should be able to give the import directly, what is to be given. So like this, certain qualities are there for sutras, and these aphorisms or sutras of Patanjali has all those qualities. And these sutras, Patanjali, how Patanjali has given, they are not as in the form of any discourse. Many people wrongly understand that Yoga Sutras of Patanjali means a discourse on the subject of yoga. But this is not at all a discourse. Very clearly in the very first aphorism itself, Patanjali says, Atha Yoga Anusasanam. Atha means now. Yoga Anusasanam. Anusasanam means not a discourse. Anusasanam means instruction, practical instruction. So, it speaks of Anusasana. Anusasana means instruction on the practical level. which is to be implemented or practiced. There is nothing very much as an explanation, but practice, you have to practice this. Suppose, for example, we want to reach certain place. So if you ask somebody, what he has to give you is the route plan immediately which will be followed to reach that place. That's all. Otherwise, if he starts describing so many things on the way, various things very extensively, that makes no sense. You have to reach certain place, that is the goal. So if you ask somebody, he has to give you the shortest and perfect route. He has to give how you can reach that place. That is the only thing. So he did not give you a description of all what is there on the way and all these things. In the same manner, this is an instruction given by Patanjali. That is what he says. Here is the instruction for practicing yoga. Atha yoga anusasanam. What is given is how to do it. How to do it, and not what happens when you do it. These two are different. How to do it is the procedure to follow. What happens when you do it is secondary. So therefore, in this text of Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, and also in the text of Bhagavad Gita, you will never find any sort of explanation or description like concepts like Kundalini or chakras or all these things. Most of the students of yoga, they expect, when they start reading the text of yoga, they expect much explanation about Kundalini, chakras and all these things, with all the technical terms and all these explanations. But such type of books are there, many books, thousands of books are there, where they give description of all these things, explanation, all these things. But in these two books, you don't find any of such descriptions or names of these things, but directly what you have to do, the most practical. So, direct and simple what you have to do. So the whole extends, the whole arena of yoga is to sublimate one's own activity of lower nature, to sublimate one's own activity of his lower nature and get it absorbed into the original existence. Because the activity of lower nature is not at all according to the original existence. That is why it leads to crisis. If you go on following your life, following the activity of your lower nature, then you will land into crisis. That is what we experience mostly in our human life, either on the individual level or on the group level, whatever it may be. But we land into crisis because we follow the lower nature always. So therefore, yoga means to sublimate this lower, the activity of our lower nature, and get it absorbed into the higher nature or the original existence, so that one can live with the same machine of the human constitution in terms of its true existence. Otherwise, we are existing but not with our true existence. That is why we always experience disharmony, crisis, all these problems. So, from the stage of understanding how one is different from others, you see, why we are always more drawn to understand how we are different from others. This is because of the activity of our nature. So this is identity consciousness. This is called identity. I try to keep my identity, how I differ from others. When I think of myself or when I speak of myself, then how I express is according to the identity consciousness. That means how I differ from all of you. So always my mind is focused on the aspect of difference, how I differ, to keep my identity. So from that stage of understanding how one is different from others, the student of yoga begins to understand how he is one with the others. You see, two different understandings. In one understanding, how I am different from others. And other understanding is how I am one with the others. As long as we keep on to understand and behave in terms of how I am different from others in the identity consciousness, then you are exposed to the environmental conditions, you are exposed to all sorts of problems. So, to solve the problems or come out of the problems, the only method is to follow the path of yoga. And following the path of yoga means we have to understand how we are one with the others. This is the first step. What is common with others? What is the difference from others? It is not, it is of lower nature. What is common with others? How I am one with all of you. So this omnipresence, it is called. That is the one self. So everyone has an individual self. But when we try to get at the common self, that is one self, we have so many bodies, so many entities, but the one self in all. So it is the day when one begins to awaken towards this, such a fact. It is an awakening. Till that time, always we try to find how I am different from others. But now, through the attempt of yoga practice, we get into awakening, how we can find the oneness with others. So, an individual attempt is to be made in the beginning. So we have to make such attempt again and again. Then, when the time of maturity comes, everyone finds himself drawn towards the same attempt. It is the same attempt because it is the same path. Everyone is led to the same path to lift up our own lower self. Ourself we have to lift up from our lower self and establish the light of the higher self. We have the lower self and we have the higher self, every individual. We have to know this, which is lower nature and the higher nature. So this lower nature keeps us bound to the identity consciousness, to find how we differ, how we are different from others. From this, because this is like a bondage, this is like a conditioning. From this, we have to make an attempt to lift ourselves to come out of this conditioning and bondage. Because our true self, our true existence is as the higher self. We have this wonderful privilege, but we are habituated to stick on to our lower nature, our lower self. So when we make an attempt, when we try to lift ourselves up from this lower nature, then we need the science of yoga to conduct the discipline of yoga practice. So even after getting induced into this, there is a long process with a very scientific procedure. And this procedure is verified many times and discovered again and again after a long period of trial and error, many times. So, yoga, the word yoga itself, very significant. Yoga is a synthesis. Let us take the example of a flower. When you find the parts of the flower, in the flower we see a beautiful flower. It has many parts which are existing together. So there, all the parts are naturally arranged in such a manner that all these various parts make us experience the flower as a one unit, synthetic unit. See, when you see a rose flower, or a lotus flower, it has many parts. It has many petals. It has a stalk underneath, and it has certain protective parts called sepals, and it has many petals arranged in a wonderful manner in a pattern, and in the middle it has its center and its stamens with wonderful colors, with fragrance and all these things. So when you have this flower with you, you will experience the flower as a synthetic unit, and you will, unless you particularly want to observe, your mind is completely absorbed into the oneness of the flower. Nobody, when holds a flower and such a wonderful flower in the hand, nobody feels that he has many parts put together as a flower. See? But suppose I separate all these parts, all the petals and all these parts, when I separate them, and again I just put them together using a thread or something else, is it the same experience you get when you have the flower as it is in your hand, and these other things which you have arranged, put them together to appear like a flower? See? So, in the natural flower, all these various parts exist as one unit. That is synthesis. But when you separate them, all of them, to analyze, and then if you want to put all of them, arrange them in a cluster, then it is not a synthesis. So it is not a synthetic unit anymore. Another example I can tell you, there are so many examples you can to know this more clearly. Another example is when you find a building is being constructed, there are many bricks which are brought from some place for the construction of the building. When they want to build a pillar for the construction of the building, so there are many bricks, and all the bricks are dumped together. Can you call them, when all the bricks are dumped together, they are together? That's true, that is true. But can you call it as a pillar or a wall? No, never. They are different from each other. Each brick is different from other brick, even though they are together. It is true that they are together, but each brick is different from the other brick. They are not united. But when once the mason arranges them into a structure, a pillar or a wall, all these bricks are arranged to make one unit, then you will call it a pillar or a wall. Then you can no more find these bricks different from each other, because they are arranged according to a plan in a synthetic manner to make one unit. So that is how we have to understand that we have to lift ourselves up from the activity of lower nature into the higher nature or higher self, to feel the oneness, not to feel, to experience the oneness. So during the preliminary emotional phase of the individual activity, causes many attempts to lift, attempts on different fields, political or social, sociological, religious, and all these. In every attempt, the problem is that the practitioner tries to keep the identity of his activity different from that of the others. Every individual tries to keep the identity of his individual activity different from the activity of others in all these fields. Then what happens? There will be always a tension, aristocracy, and a failure many times. So every time there is an attempt, let us come together, let us work together. All this, it is okay, that is only an attempt. Suppose a person has inaugurated a new political party, then he invites many people to join this party. And yes, we are all united, we are all one, but not really they are united. Because they try to establish how they are to be identified different from others. Then how is it possible? Even within that party, once again, also, every individual wants to make his own individual existence, his own identity different from others. So it is only an attempt, but it is a failure on all these folds. So in this activity, always there is a tension, an aristocracy, and a failure. And then once again, he tries to find out any new procedure which can lead us to this goal. So in this attempt, even in the so-called spiritual field also, we find from time to time a new meditation, a new mantra, a new procedure, study of new scripture, and conversion from one to the other. All these things come again into existence. We want to make a progress, but again we are under the influence of our lower nature only. That is why from the religious beliefs and all these things, conversions and all these things, that is because of the lower nature. So he is not satisfied because still it is under the influence of lower nature and all emotional level. So there are many master locks from the same key. So lack of fitness makes everything a deadlock. So every step gives some development, but the development is on the individual plane. It is not permitted to expand beyond the individual or personal layer of consciousness. So that is why there is a limitation. So ultimately we have to step into the yogic way of living, or yoga practice of yogic way of living. Then we enter into the right path. So this What is important is a practical training. It should be very practical and applicable in the daily life. That is why Patanjali said, Atha Yoganusasam, the first aphorism he said, now there is instruction for yoga practice. It is directly instruction for application. You know, for example, when a person is hungry, what you have to do? You have to serve food in a plate before the person. But suppose when you start to give a discourse on how to prepare the wonderful food, the very tasty food, what is the procedure, and what are the advantages and disadvantages of these types of foods and all these things. So for 1 hour you have given a discourse about how to prepare the food and about the food and all these things. You see, in the internet, the whole 24 hours in the internet, there are many people who explain how to prepare this, prepare that. Suppose you are hungry, if you sit before this internet and look into these discourses, how to prepare this food, can you feel satisfied of your hunger? In the same manner, what is the use of giving so much of information about all these things, chakras and kundalinis and all, and this and that? Practical application. That is why Patanjali gives what is to be implemented immediately, how to put practice into practice. That is important. But that doesn't mean that there is no Kundalini and chakras. There are chakras are there, Kundalini is there, but it is only a symbolic term. So first, there is Kundalini, okay, but what you have to do? Immediately what you have to do, what is the procedure you have to apply? What is the use of knowing the names of all these things? So, suppose, for example, you say a person is intelligent. Where can you find the intelligence in him? Can you locate the intelligence? Where is the intelligence in his body? Will, intelligence, all these things. Even the mind also. Where can you locate the mind? Can it be located locked in the brain cells? Brain is the only seat of mind, activity of mind. But mind is not kept locked in the brain cells. So this is not the way, but practical. How Patanjali says is, in the book of Patanjali you find practical instructions to assemble your machine without the technical terms and the names of all these things. Only what is given is what to do, how to proceed, how to meditate, how to realize, and how to live in the realized awareness. That is how it is given in Patanjali. That is why he starts with instruction. He says, Yoga Anusasanam. So the conscious contact with the soul is the main aim of the process given in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. Conscious contact with the soul. Soul is not something which you have different from yourself. You see, for example, if I say, I have my body I have my senses, I have my mind, I have my intelligence, it is correct, yes. But if I say I have a soul, it is wrong. I have to say that I am the soul, not I have the soul. All the other things are what I have. Body, senses, mind, intelligence, all these things, what I have. But soul is not something which I have. Soul means I am the soul. So, there should be a conscious contact with the soul. That is the main aim of the process given in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. A conscious contact with the soul. Otherwise, we speak of the soul as if it is some different entity, always. So how? And also it is explained about the necessity to take a decision. About the necessity to take a decision. So some people think, they say that everything is predestined since everything is natural. If everything is predestined, then why should you make an attempt? If everything is predestined, there is no need of making any attempt. Just eat and sleep because everything is predestined. So, it is not like that. So it is what is called fatalism. If somebody thinks that everything is predestined, that means it is fatalism. So yoga is not fatalism. So one makes an attempt when it is time for him. That is the truth. That is the real truth. This is because he feels like making an attempt when it is time for him. You see, for example, when is it that you will take a glass of water and drink? When you feel thirsty. Until you feel thirsty, you will not take a glass of water to drink. It is quite common sense. So in the same manner, you will feel the necessity for you to make a conscious contact with your soul. When you feel it, then you will start the attempt. That is the truth. That is not a fatalism. So that is how Patanjali starts this book of his aphorisms, telling that these are the instructions, Atha Yoga Anusasanam. These are the instructions I am giving. Be ready to follow the instructions. That means you have to make yourself ready to follow these instructions, apply these instructions in your daily life. That is the real practice of yoga. So, what is the meaning of the real meaning of the word yoga is given by him in the next aphorism, which we are going to study next week. So with this little introduction, let us go further into the study of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. So thank you very much. We will meet next week at the same time. Vasudeva.